President Obama stands before Congress and the country tonight. He's going to deliver the State of the Union address. It's expected to be more partisan than the previous three. Chief Congressional Correspondent Dana Bash is live on Capitol Hill for us this morning. Dana, I know you had a chance to sit down with some young Republican lawmakers to talk about the gridlock in Congress. What did they tell you?
That's right. Of course, the ability for the president to get anything done will depend again on largely on what happens with the Republican-led House. I did sit down with three members of the class of 2010, the ones who gave Republicans that majority 2 years ago. And I asked them whether or not it is a fair criticism that part of the gridlock over the past couple of years is that John Boehner, the Speaker, couldn't do anything. His hands were tied because people like them, rank and file, were so dug in.
Well, look, again, as was mentioned, being in the majority is tough, and especially when you deal with issues and you have, sometimes people that say you can't flex on anything. We elected you not to compromise, not to flex on anything. And of course you do. You hear that, and you hear also people come and say, hey, look, both sides are going to have to put something on the table in order to govern. That never is easy.
Do you think it's fair that the Speaker has wanted to go towards a compromise every now and then, like on the grand bargain, and he hasn't been able to because of you all?
John Boehner has the hardest job in Congress. In fact, if you really want to punish him, make him keep being the Speaker.
If you look at things like fiscal cliff, at the fact that you raised the debt ceiling without spending cuts, as you all had been very clear you were going to demand, what is that a sign of? Is that a sign of understanding the art of legislating a little bit more? Is that a sign of, being a little bit more sophisticated in the ways of Washington?
It's a sign of recognizing opportunities here in the next few months to really reduce our spending and to give the president an opportunity to reach out a hand and say, take it, help us fix this country.
And so that is what all three lawmakers said that they are going to be listening for tonight. Obviously, this is the beginning of the president's second term, but they question whether or not his focus is going to be more on electing a Democratic House than reaching out and getting something done in these at least first 2 years of his last 4 years.
Well, so, Dana, you also talked to them about Lincoln. What did they say?
Really interesting. Of course, today is Lincoln's birthday. People may not realize that, but there's been so much talk about the president being so entranced and taken back by the Lincoln movie. I asked what their perspective was, and I got a really interesting few answers. Listen. The movie Lincoln, the president apparently quotes from it all the time, walks around the White House doing so. Did you all see it, and is there any kind of lessons that you can take from that going forward?
I saw it 3 times.
Really?
Yeah, the biggest quote that really resonated with me, and it did the very first time I heard it, was when Lincoln was talking about a compass and talking about knowing true north. But what good does it do to really know where true north is if it doesn't tell you about the swamps and deserts and valleys in between?
I watched it sitting beside Tim Scott, so it was
by the people, for the people.
Emotional for me. Being from South Carolina, having him as my senator. So I'm proud of him for a lot of reasons, but the fact that he represents my state and watching that movie with him was something I'll never forget.
And so that was quite a moment in that interview, having Trey Gowdy, the congressman from South Carolina, get so choked up about sitting with his black Republican colleague, a senator from South Carolina, who he's clearly close with and very proud of.
Right, great. Dana Bash for us this morning. Thanks, Dana. Appreciate it. Want to get right to CNN anchor and chief Washington correspondent Jake Tapper. Jake Tapper, nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Soledad. Great to be here.
Tapper. He's also so Tapper. You've got some breaking news about what we can expect in the State of the Union this evening.
That's right, Soledad. According to sources with knowledge of the President's State of the Union address this evening, President Obama tonight will announce that by this time next year, 34,000 U.S. troops currently in Afghanistan will be back home. That will be reducing the number of troops in that country by roughly a half. So CNN can report that tonight President Obama will make that news, will announce that 34,000 U.S. troops currently in Afghanistan will be back home by this time next year. That is a big announcement to be making, a big foreign policy announcement to be making in a State of the Union address that is expected to be largely about domestic issues and the middle class.
Yeah, we've been talking about jobs being the focus of this. What do you think? Is it going to be partisan, or is it going to be more of an olive branch extended to folks?
I don't think it will be either, if I can be so bold as to take something that you're not offering, a choice that you're not offering.
You may take
I think he will
always.
I think he will be assertive. I think he will not perceive, he and the White House will not perceive what he's saying as overtly confrontational. I'm sure it will be interpreted that way. I don't anticipate a big olive branch of a speech. He'll talk about common sense measures that Republicans have supported in the past. And he'll view that as bipartisan, I'm sure.
You know, it really feels like two tracks. On the one hand, the agenda that he's put forward on some of the non-economic issues, immigration, gun control, climate, by definition, presage conflict with Republicans who are ambivalent at best about moving forward on anything. On the other hand, on the big issue of the debt and deficit, since the summer of 2011, he has signaled that he is willing to make a big deal, including some elements, maybe less than 2 years ago, that would antagonize Democrats. So I think you can't kind of, I think, Jake, what you're saying is you can't really kind of put it in one box or the other. There are different strategies, I think, on different fronts.
But you have to recognize every time the president says something like that, he moves the goalpost, continually. He says he's willing to do one thing, and then once Republicans talk about that, he moves it. The two areas that the American people want to hear tonight, and I don't think they're going to hear it, is one, what you're going to do to stop talking about jobs, but really create jobs. That's what's really at the heart of what Americans are concerned about. But the second one is this. They're concerned about this polarized country that we're in, and they want to see a leader step up to the plate and really say something that brings people together. I don't think you're going to see that.
For that.
I'm hopeful for it, but I don't think we're going to see it.
On the jobs front, he will talk, I'm told from sources in the White House, he will talk about creating middle-class jobs.
He's going to talk about that, but he's not going to talk about what job creators want, which is taking some of these taxes off their back and these regulations. He's going to talk about putting more of it on them.
Do you see any opportunity on some of those areas, either domestic energy production, infrastructure bank, areas like that, where there may in fact be some agreement, as opposed to the taxes?
I do, but I don't think it's so much with the president. For example, tonight I'll be sitting with Tim Kaine, Democratic senator from Virginia. We differ on a lot of issues. We both love Virginia. We love America. We have respect for each other. We're going to be working together to try to get those kind of compromises. But I think that's what it's going to take to move this country forward. I hope the president does that tonight. I'm just not optimistic.
But Congressman, to be perfectly blunt, but that's y'all's job. I mean, the president clearly is the president, but when it comes to those kind of changes, Congress has to pass those laws. So at some point, members of Congress must say, we have to step up, stop spending so much time on recess, and actually get to work to pass those things.
What are you hearing about what he's going to say about the sequester?
About the sequester, I don't think he's going to get into specific deadlines, but he'll talk about how there is a big grand bargain to be achieved, but in the short term, Congress needs to take care of avoiding these cuts, avoiding these draconian cuts.
But if we look at what Roland said about Congress stepping up and doing their job, the House did that. They passed a budget last year that would have dealt with sequestration. The Senate has yet to do it, and the President has yet to put forward a proposal. Unfortunately, we don't get to do both. We can't do the House and the Senate.
And will the House remain committed to the centerpieces of that budget from 2011 and 2012, which were converting Medicare into a premium support system, converting Medicaid into a block grant? Is that something that is still on the table from your point of view?
I don't think you have to draw lines in the sand. I think that what you have to do is what Roland said. We passed a budget, and the way this process has to work, then the Senate has to pass something. They've refused to do it, so we can come to a table and compromise.
Well, we'll see what the President has to say this evening for State of the Union. Jake Tapper, nice to have you with us. We appreciate it. Of course, Jake and the rest of the CNN team.